The stars looked the same as they always had, but Captain Jake Morrison knew better. He had been flying through space for 15 years, and he understood that nothing in the galaxy was ever truly the same. Behind his ship's thick windows, distant suns burned with light that had traveled for thousands of years to reach his eyes. Some of those stars might already be dead, their light just taking time to catch up with reality. Jake sat in his captain's chair on the bridge of the New Horizons, watching the navigation display show their steady progress toward the Kepler 442 system. His crew was small, but skilled. Lisa Park worked at the communications station, her fingers moving quickly across the control panels as she monitored signals from across the galaxy. At the engineering station, Danny Sullivan kept watch over the ship's systems, making sure everything ran smoothly. Amy Rodriguez stood near the security console, always alert for potential threats. They were human, and that meant they were practically invisible to the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Council had labeled humanity as a Tier 7 species. Over 200 years ago, when humans first made contact with the wider universe, Tier 7 meant they were considered barely above primitive by galactic standards. It was not a flattering rating, but it had its advantages. The galaxy was ruled by much more powerful species. The Zephyrians were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and the ability to read minds. They controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes and made many of the important decisions. The Corvin Empire was made up of warrior-like creatures with thick armor-plated skin and a love of conquest. They had the strongest military in the galaxy and were not afraid to use it. There were dozens of other species, each with their own special abilities and territories. Some could manipulate energy with their thoughts. Others could live for thousands of years. Few could even see into the future. Compared to all of them, humans seemed ordinary and unremarkable. But Jake had learned that being ordinary had its benefits. While other species fought for power and respect, humans simply worked. They took jobs that others did not want. They fixed machines in dangerous places. They ran supply ships to remote stations. They provided technical support to anyone who needed it, no matter how far from civilization they lived. The Galactic Council barely noticed humans at all. To them, humans were just another worker species. They were useful for getting things done, but not important enough to worry about. This allowed human ships to travel freely throughout Council space. They could go anywhere and see anything. As long as they kept quiet and did their jobs, Jake had been assigned to survey the Kepler 442 system for potential mining rights. It was supposed to be empty, just another uninhabited star system on the edge of Council space. The job was routine, the kind of work that humans did well. Go in, take measurements, file a report, and move on to the next system. Captain Weir. Approaching the system boundary, Lisa reported from her station. Her voice was calm and professional, the way it always was during normal operations. Any signs of activity? Jake asked. Nothing on the communication channels. To be as empty as the records indicate, Danny looked up from his engineering displays. All systems are running normally. We're ready for the survey mission. Jake nodded. Take us in, Lisa. Standard approach pattern. The New Horizons moved forward into the Kepler 442 system. The main star was a yellow dwarf, smaller than Earth's sun, but still burning steadily. There were 6 planets in the system, but none of them were suitable for life as humans knew it. The third planet was too hot, the fourth too cold, and the others were gas giants with no solid surface. As they moved deeper into the system, Jake watched the sensor readings carefully. Something felt different about this place, though he could not put his finger on what it was. The sensors showed nothing unusual, but his instincts told him to be careful. Captain Amy called from her security station. I'm picking up some unusual energy readings from the 4th planet. Jake turned to look at her displays. What kind of energy? I'm not sure. It's very faint, but definitely artificial. The pattern doesn't match any known technology. Lisa, can you get a better reading from the communications array? Lisa adjusted her controls and focused the ship's sensors on the 4th planet. After a few minutes, she shook her head. The signal is too weak to analyze from this distance. We would need to get closer. Jake considered their options. Their mission was to survey the system for mining potential, not to investigate mysterious energy signatures. But something about the reading bothered him. In his experience, artificial energy signatures in supposedly empty systems usually meant trouble. Danny, how long would it take to modify the sensors for a closer look? Maybe an hour, if I can boost the power to the sensor array without affecting life support. Do it, Amy. I want you to monitor all defensive systems. If there's something down there, I want to know about it before it knows about us. The New Horizons changed course toward the fourth planet. As they got closer, the energy readings became stronger and more complex. Whatever was generating the signal was definitely not natural, and it was definitely not human technology. Captain, you need to see this, Lisa said, her voice filled with excitement and concern. Jake moved to her station and looked at the display. The screen showed a massive structure on the planet's surface, partially buried under centuries of dust and rock. It was clearly artificial, but unlike anything in the galactic databases. The structure was enormous, stretching for kilometers in all directions. How old is this thing? Jake asked. Based on the geological data, it's been here for at least 50,000 years. Maybe longer, Danny replied from his engineering station. Jake stared at the display. 50,000 years ago, none of the current galactic civilizations had even existed. The Zephyrians had only achieved spaceflight 20,000 years ago. The Corvan Empire was even younger. Whatever had built this structure had been here long before any of them. Amy, any signs of defensive systems? Nothing active, but the structure is generating a low-level energy field. It might be some kind a passive scanning system. Jake was about to order a more detailed scan when Lisa's communication board lit up with incoming signals. Captain, we have company. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The main display showed a fleet of Corvan battlecruisers materializing in the system. There were at least 12 ships, all heavily armed and moving in a standard attack formation. At the center of the formation was a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. Identify yourselves, came a harsh voice over the communication system. It was spoken in Galactic Standard, but with the growling accent of a Corvan military officer. Jake signaled for Lisa to open a channel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizons. We are conducting a routine survey mission. Under Galactic Council authorization, human vessel, you will depart this system immediately. This area is now under the protection of the Corvan Empire. Jake looked at his crew. They all knew what this meant. The Corvans had somehow learned about the ancient structure and were claiming the system for themselves. It was a typical Corvan response to any discovery of potential value. Understood, Jake replied. We will begin departure preparations immediately. But as the New Horizons started to turn away from the planet, something unexpected happened. Ancient structure began to pulse with bright energy, sending waves of power across the planet's surface. The energy was so intense that it could be seen from space, turning the planet into a beacon of light. The Corvan fleet immediately changed course toward the planet, their weapons charging for what looked like a military operation, Jake realized. That humanity's quiet survey mission had just become something much more dangerous. Lisa, record everything. I have a feeling we're about to witness something that will change the galaxy forever. The ancient structure continued to pulse with increasing intensity, as if it was waking up after sleeping for thousands of years. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Jake had the uncomfortable feeling that it was waking up for a reason. The ancient structure on the fourth planet pulsed with energy that made the New Horizons sensors scream warnings. Jake Morrison watched the displays as readings climbed far beyond anything he had ever seen. The energy output was more powerful than a star, but it was controlled and focused in ways that seemed impossible. Danny, are you seeing this? Jake asked his engineer. Danny Sullivan stared at his screens with wide eyes. Captain, this thing is generating more power than the entire Corvan fleet combined. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The Corvan battle fleet was already moving toward the planet in attack formation. Their lead ship, a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fist, took position directly above the structure. Commander Rick Barnes, the fleet's leader, was known throughout the galaxy for his aggressive tactics and short temper. Human vessel Barnes. Voice crackled over the communication system. You will leave this system immediately. What happens here is no concern of yours. Jake signaled Lisa to keep the channel open. Commander Barnes, we're detecting dangerous energy levels from the planet. Our sensors indicate the structure might be unstable. Your primitive sensors are of no interest to me. Depart now, or be destroyed. Corvin ships formed a defensive circle around the planet while their scientists began scanning the structure. Jake could see smaller ships launching from the dreadnought, heading down to the planet's surface. The Corvins were moving fast, probably hoping to claim whatever technology was buried there before anyone else arrived. Captain Amy Rodriguez called from her security station. The energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever that thing is, it's responding to the Corvin presence. Jake looked at the tactical display. The ancient structure was indeed changing its behavior. The energy pulses were becoming more frequent and more powerful. It was as if the structure was trying to communicate, or perhaps warning them about something. Lisa, can you make any sense of those energy patterns? Lisa Park worked frantically at her communications console, trying to decode the signals. It's definitely artificial, Captain. The patterns are too complex to be natural. Looks like some kind of language, but it's unlike anything we've encountered. On the planet's surface, the Corvon landing parties were setting up equipment around the structure. Through the ship's sensors, Jake could see teams of scientists and soldiers working to establish a base camp. They were treating the structure like a military objective, surrounding it with weapons and barriers. The structure responded to their presence with another massive pulse of energy. This time the pulse was different. Instead of just radiating outward, it seemed to carry information. Lisa's communication board lit up with signals as the pulse reached their ship. Captain, I'm getting something, Lisa said, her voice filled with excitement. The pulse contains data. It's in an ancient language, but our computers are starting to recognize patterns. Jake moved to her station. What kind of data? Coordinates? Hundreds of them scattered across the galaxy. Each coordinate seems to be marking a specific location. Dene looked up from his engineering station. Captain, if those coordinates are accurate, they're pointing to systems throughout Council space. Some of them are in heavily populated areas. Before Jake could respond, the Corvin scientists on the planet made their move. They activated a large scanning device and pointed it directly at the structure. The device was designed to penetrate and analyze alien technology, but it was also highly invasive. The structure's response was immediate and violent. A massive wave of energy erupted from the planet, racing outward at impossible speed. The energy wave struck the Corvon fleet like a physical blow, sending the smaller ships spinning and causing the dreadnought to shake violently. All ships. Report, Barnes' voice shouted over the communication channel. The responses came back quickly, and none of them were good. 3 of the smaller ships had lost power completely. The dreadnought's weapon systems were offline, several ships reported. Injuries among their crews, but the energy wave had done something else. As it passed through space, it carried a message. Lisa's equipment detected the transmission and began working to decode it. Captain, you need to hear this, Lisa said, her voice filled with worry. She played the decoded message through the bridge. Speakers. The voice was not human, not Corvin, and not like any known species. It was ancient and strange, but the translation was clear. Warning. The Devourers approach. Prepare the defenses. Activate the network. The Silent Ones have returned. Felt a chill run down his spine? The Silent Ones? I don't know, Captain. But whatever they are, this structure was built to send a warning about something called the Devourers. The Corvon fleet was regrouping, but their aggressive approach had clearly been the wrong move. The structure was not just a piece of ancient technology. It was a warning system, and it had been activated by their presence. Captain Amy called from her station. Structure is doing something new. It's creating some kind of energy barrier around itself. Jake looked at the tactical display. A shimmering field of energy was forming around the ancient structure, growing larger and more powerful with each passing moment. The field was beautiful, but clearly dangerous. Danny, What's your analysis? It's a defensive system, Captain. The energy barrier is designed to protect the structure from attack. Our sensors can't penetrate it, and I doubt the Corvin weapons can either. Commander Barnes was apparently thinking the same thing. All ships prepare for bombardment. We will destroy this structure before it can cause more damage. The Corvin fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, plasma missiles, and kinetic projectiles rained down on the planet. The bombardment was intense enough to crack a moon, but the structure's barrier held firm. The weapons fire simply disappeared into the energy field without effect. Impossible, Barnes muttered over the communication channel. But something strange was happening. As the Corvin weapons fired, the energy barrier began to expand. It grew larger and larger, eventually reaching out into space itself. And as it expanded, it began to surround the New Horizons. Captain, we're being pulled into the barrier, Amy reported. Jake gripped his chair as the ship was gently drawn into the energy field. Expected to feel the ship being torn apart, but instead he felt nothing. The barrier was not hostile to them. It was protective. All systems normal, Danny reported. The barrier isn't affecting our ship at all. It protect us and not the Corvons, Jake wondered aloud. Lisa looked up from her station. Captain, I'm getting more data from the structure. The message is longer than we thought. It's not just a warning about the Devourers. It's instructions. What kind of instructions? How to activate other structures like this one. The coordinates it transmitted aren't just locations. They're activation codes for a network of ancient technology spanning the entire galaxy. Jake stared at the display showing the protective barrier around their ship, and it's only sharing this information with us. The implications were staggering. Somewhere out there, something called the Devourers was approaching. The ancient structure was part of a galaxy-wide defense network. For some reason, it had chosen to share its secrets with humanity instead of the more powerful Corvin Empire. Captain, Lisa said quietly. There's something else. The structure is scanning our ship. Our crew, our entire species. It's like it's trying to determine if we're worthy of something. Jake looked at his crew. They were just humans, considered barely above primitive by galactic standards. But something about them had impressed this ancient technology enough to offer protection and share vital information. Amy, monitor the Corvin fleet. I want to know what they're planning next. Yes, Captain. They're pulling back to a safe distance, but they're not leaving the system. Jake nodded. The Corvons would not give up easily. They would keep trying to claim the structure, and their aggressive approach would probably make things worse. Lisa, keep working on that message. Want to know everything this structure is trying to tell us. Already on it, Captain. I think we're going to need help. This technology is more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. As if in response to her words, the structure pulsed again. This time, the energy reached out across the galaxy, sending signals to the coordinates it had shared. Jake realized that other structures were probably awakening right now, all across Council space. Whatever was coming, the galaxy was about to change forever. And somehow, humanity was at the center of it all. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy within hours of the first structure awakening. Lisa Park monitored the communication channels as dozens of similar discoveries came through the galactic network. Every coordinate that the ancient structure had transmitted was now active, and the results were causing panic throughout Council space. Captain, we have confirmation from 17 different systems, Lisa reported to Jake Morrison. Ancient structures are awakening on planets across the galaxy. They're all generating the same energy signatures as the one here. Jake studied the tactical display showing the protective barrier that still surrounded the New Horizons. Outside the barrier, the Corvin fleet waited like hungry predators, unable to approach the ancient structure, but unwilling to leave. Commander Barnes had called for reinforcements, and more Corvin ships were arriving every few hours. What about the other species? How are they reacting? The Zephyrians are evacuating several of their colonies. They're saying their psychic abilities are being overwhelmed by something they can't understand. The Corvin Empire is mobilizing their entire military. They're treating this as a galaxy-wide threat. Danny Sullivan looked up from his engineering station. Captain, the structure is still interfacing with our ship's systems. It's not damaging anything, but it's definitely learning about our technology. Amy Rodriguez monitored the security displays. The Corvin fleet is getting nervous. They've moved to a more defensive position, but they're not leaving the system. Jake nodded. The situation was becoming more complex by the hour. Whatever these ancient structures were, they were part of something much larger than anyone had imagined. And humanity seemed to be at the center of it all. A new signal came through the communication system. This time it was not from the Corvins, but from a human research station in the Centauri system. The voice belonged to Ben Carter, a human archaeologist, who had been studying ancient artifacts for the past 10 years. Captain Morrison, this is Dr. Carter at Research Station Alpha. I need to speak with you immediately. Jake signaled Lisa to open the channel. Dr. Carter, this is Captain Morrison. Go ahead, Captain. I've been studying the ancient language. Patterns that are coming from these structures. I think I've made a breakthrough. It's the entities that built these things called themselves the Silent Ones. And they left these structures as more than just a warning system. What did you discover? The structures aren't designed to keep something out of the galaxy. They're designed to keep something in, something that's been locked away for thousands of years. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of something? The data calls them the Devourers. According to the ancient records, they're entities that exist partially outside normal space and time. They consume entire star systems, not just the planets and stars, but the very fabric of reality itself. Lisa leaned forward at her station. Dr. Carter, are you saying these Devourers are already here? Not here, but close. The structures are detecting movement in the void between galaxies. Something vast is approaching our galaxy, and it's been traveling for a very long time. Danny checked his instruments. Captain, the structure on the planet is responding to Dr. Carter's transmission. The energy output is increasing again. Jake looked at the display. The ancient structure was indeed becoming more active, as if it recognized the importance of what Dr. Carter was saying. Dr. Carter, why are these structures only responding to humans? Why not the Zephyrians or the Corvons? That's the most interesting part, Captain. The Silent Ones weren't just builders of technology. They were observers. They watched the galaxy for thousands of years, studying every species that achieved spaceflight. They were looking for something specific. What were they looking for? Wisdom. Not intelligence, not power, not psychic abilities. Wisdom. The ability to act with restraint. To observe before acting. To work together for the common good, rather than personal gain. Jake understood immediately. Humanity's tendency to remain in the background, to work quietly without seeking recognition, was not a sign of weakness. It was exactly what the Silent Ones had been looking for. Every species in the galaxy has been tested over the centuries, Dr. Carter continued. The Corvins failed because they respond to everything with violence. The Zephyrians failed because they consider themselves superior to everyone else. The other species failed for similar reasons. But humans passed. Humans are still being tested, Captain. But so far, we're the only species that has shown the restraint and wisdom that the Silent Ones were looking for. A new alarm sounded on the bridge. Amy checked her security displays and looked up with concern. Captain, we have a problem. The Corvin fleet is preparing for another attack on the structure. Jake could see the Corvin ships moving into bombardment formation. Commander Barnes was apparently planning a much larger assault than before. Lisa, get me a direct channel to Commander Barnes. Channel open, Captain. Out. Commander Barnes, this is Captain Morrison. I strongly advise against attacking the structure. Again, our data indicates it could have dangerous consequences. Barnes' voice was filled with anger. Human, you will not interfere with Corvon military operations. This structure is a threat to galactic security, and it will be destroyed, Commander. The structure is not a threat. It's a defense system designed to protect the galaxy from something much worse. I do not care what your primitive analysis suggests. The Corvin Empire does not cower before ancient relics. The communication channel closed, and Jake watched as the Corvon fleet began their attack. This time, they were using more powerful weapons, including planet-killing missiles that could crack a world's surface. The bombardment was even more intense than before. The space around the planet filled with energy beams and explosive projectiles. But once again, the structure's barrier held firm against the assault. However, something different happened this time. As the Corvin weapons struck the barrier, the energy field began to expand rapidly. It grew larger and larger, eventually encompassing the entire planet. Then it kept growing, reaching out into space itself. "Captain, the barrier is surrounding the entire Corvin fleet," Amy reported. Jake watched in amazement as the energy field expanded to include all of the Corvin ships. But unlike the gentle protection that the New Horizons had experienced, the barrier seemed to be constraining the Corvin vessels. "Their weapons are offline," Danny observed. "The barrier is somehow neutralizing their military systems." Commander Barnes' voice came over the emergency channel. "What is happening to my ships?" "The structure is responding to your aggressive behavior," Jake replied. "It's designed to neutralize threats. This is an act of war." "No, Commander. This is a defensive response to your attacks. The structure is trying to protect itself and the galaxy from unnecessary violence." While the Corvin fleet struggled with their disabled ships, more reports came in from across the galaxy. Similar incidents were happening wherever the ancient structures had awakened. Species that approached with weapons found themselves neutralized. Species that approached peacefully were protected. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "I'm receiving transmissions from human ships throughout the galaxy. They're all reporting similar experiences. The structures are protecting human vessels while constraining more aggressive species." Jake realized that this was more than just a test. The ancient structures were preparing for something, and they were choosing their allies carefully. Humanity was not just being protected. They were being recruited. "Dr. Carter, are you still monitoring this channel?" "Yes, Captain." "How long do we have before these devourers arrive?" "Based on the energy patterns from the structures, I estimate we have weeks, maybe a few months at most. The structures are trying to prepare a defense network, but they need operators who can work with the technology rather than against it." Jake looked at his crew. They were ordinary humans, members of a species that the galaxy barely noticed. But they were about to become the most important people in the galaxy. "Lisa, send a message to all human ships and stations. Tell them what we've learned. Tell them that humanity is about to face its greatest challenge." "What about the other species?" Jake watched the disabled Corvin fleet floating helplessly in the energy barrier. "They'll learn soon enough. The galaxy is about to discover that sometimes the quiet ones are the most important ones of all." The truth hit the galaxy like a shockwave when the ancient network fully activated. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the New Horizons as data streams poured in from every corner of known space. The structures were not just communicating with each other anymore. They were sharing their complete history, revealing secrets that had been hidden for 50,000 years. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa Park said from her communication station. Her voice was filled with awe and fear. "The structures are transmitting a complete historical record. It's the story of our entire galaxy." Jake moved to her station and watched as the ancient data filled their screens. The images were clear and detailed, showing events from long before any current civilization existed. He saw vast cities floating in space, technologies beyond imagination, and species that looked nothing like anything in the modern galaxy. "Danny, can our computers handle all this data?" Danny Sullivan worked frantically at his engineering station. "Barely, Captain. The information flow is enormous." The ancient civilization documented everything. They recorded the rise and fall of hundreds of species over thousands of years. The most shocking revelation came when the data reached the part about the galaxy's current dominant species. The Zephyrians, Corvins, and most other major civilizations were not originally from this galaxy at all. They were refugees from another galaxy, one that had been completely consumed by the entities called the Devourers. "My God," Amy Rodriguez whispered as she watched the historical records. "The Zephyrians fled here thousands of years ago. Their original homeworld was devoured along with their entire galaxy." Jake studied the data carefully. "Weren't the original inhabitants of this galaxy either?" "No," Captain Lisa replied. According to this, the Silent Ones were the original inhabitants. When the refugee species arrived, the Silent Ones welcomed them. They shared their technology and helped them build new civilizations. But they also built the defense network, Danny added. They knew the Devourers would eventually follow the refugees here. The historical record showed how the Silent Ones had spent thousands of years preparing for this moment. They had studied every refugee species, watching how they developed and grew in their new home. They had tested each species, quietly looking for the qualities that would be needed to operate their defense network. The tests were not obvious. They did not involve taking exams or proving technological advancement. Instead, the Silent Ones watched how each species behaved when they thought no one was looking. They observed how different species treated their workers, how they resolved conflicts, and how they approached unknown situations. The Corvins failed because they always chose violence first, Jake realized as he read the data. Even when peaceful solutions were available, they preferred to fight. The Zephyrians failed because they believed their psychic abilities made them superior to everyone else, Lisa added. They could never work as equals with other species. Every major species in the galaxy had been found lacking in some way. Were too aggressive, others too proud. Some were too focused on their own advancement to be trusted with galactic security. Others simply lacked the patience and wisdom needed for the task ahead. Only humanity had shown the qualities the Silent Ones were looking for. The historical record showed decades of observation as humans quietly worked throughout the galaxy. The Silent Ones had watched humans fix machines without seeking credit, provide help without expecting reward, and solve problems through cooperation. Rather than force, Captain Amy called from her security station. "I'm getting reports from Lieutenant Colonel Steve Hayes at Defense Station Omega. He's detecting movement at the Galactic Rim." Jake's blood ran cold. Defense Station Omega was humanity's most remote outpost, positioned at the very edge of the galaxy, where space became empty void. If Steve Hayes was detecting something out there, it could only mean one thing. Put him. Through Amy, Steve Hayes' face appeared on the main screen. He was a veteran officer with 20 years of experience, and Jake had never seen him look so worried. "Captain Morrison, we have a situation out here. Our long-range sensors are picking up massive objects moving through the void between galaxies. They're still far away, but they're definitely heading this way." "How massive?" "Each object appears to be larger than a star system, Captain, and there are dozens of them, maybe hundreds." Jake felt the weight of the galaxy settling on his shoulders. "How long before they reach us?" "At their current speed, maybe 6 weeks. But Captain, there's something else. These things aren't traveling through normal space. They seem to be moving through dimensions we can't even detect properly." The ancient network responded to Steve's report by sending another massive data burst to all human ships and stations. This time, the information was not historical. It was technical specifications for weapons and defensive systems that were beyond human understanding. "Captain," Danny said, his voice filled with wonder, "the structures are upgrading our ships. They're interfacing with our technology and enhancing it with their own systems." Jake could feel the new horizons changing around him. The ship's engines became more powerful, the sensors more sensitive, and the hull stronger. But the changes were not just mechanical. The ship was becoming something new, a hybrid of human engineering and ancient technology. "Lisa, are other human ships reporting similar upgrades?" "Yes, Captain. Every human vessel in the galaxy is being enhanced. But only human ships. The structures are ignoring everyone else." On the planet below, the ancient structure was growing. It was not just pulsing with energy anymore. It was actually expanding, building new sections of itself using materials drawn from the planet's core. The construction was happening at impossible speed, as if the structure was preparing for war. Captain Amy reported. "Commander Barnes is requesting permission to speak with you. Put him through." Barnes' face appeared on the screen, and Jake could see that the Corvin commander was struggling with his pride. "Captain Morrison, I need to discuss our situation." "Go ahead, Commander." "My fleet has been disabled for 3 days, so our weapons are offline, our engines are limited, and we cannot leave the energy barrier. Meanwhile, your ship operates freely and appears to be receiving upgrades from the ancient technology. Jake chose his words carefully. The structures respond to intent, Commander. They protect those who approach peacefully and constrain those who approach with weapons. Are you suggesting that the Corvan Empire should surrender to ancient technology? Suggesting that the Corvan Empire should consider working with the ancient technology instead of trying to destroy it. Barnes was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less aggressive, more thoughtful. What do you know about the threat we're facing? Jake made a decision. Despite their differences, Barnes and his crew were still part of the galactic community. They deserved to know what was coming. The entities approaching our galaxy are called the Devourers. They consume the original homeworlds of most of the current galactic species, exist partially outside normal reality, which makes them almost impossible to fight with conventional weapons. In the ancient structures, they're part of a defense network built by the original inhabitants of this galaxy. The Silent Ones spent thousands of years preparing for this moment. Barnes listened carefully as Jake explained what they had learned. When Jake finished, the Corvan commander was silent for a long time. Captain Morrison, if what you say is true, then the Corvan Empire has been approaching this situation incorrectly. The structures don't want to destroy anyone, Commander. They want to protect the galaxy. They need operators who can work with them rather than against them. And they have chosen humanity for this role? It appears so. But that doesn't mean other species can't help. Structures respond to behavior, not species. If the Corvans can approach this situation with wisdom instead of force, the structures might accept their help as well. Barnes nodded slowly. I will discuss this with my fleet commanders. Perhaps it is time for the Corvan Empire to learn new ways of solving problems. As the communication ended, Jake looked at his crew. They were no longer just humans exploring the galaxy. They were the chosen guardians of an ancient defense network, preparing to face a threat that had already destroyed entire galaxies. The test was over, and humanity had passed. Now came the real challenge, saving the galaxy from the approaching darkness. The first Devourer broke through the galactic rim on a Tuesday. Jake Morrison was on the bridge of the New Horizons when the ancient structures across the galaxy screamed their warnings. The ship, now enhanced with technology he barely understood, shuddered as reality itself seemed to bend around the approaching threat. Captain, we're getting readings that shouldn't be possible, Danny Sullivan reported from his engineering station. The ancient upgrades had changed his displays completely, showing dimensions of space that human science had never imagined. Lisa Park worked frantically at her communications console, coordinating with human ships throughout the galaxy. All defense stations are reporting the same thing. Something massive just entered our galaxy from the void, and it's not following normal physics. Jake stared at the main display, watching sensor readings that made no sense. The Devourer appeared to be the size of a solar system, but it also seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Parts of it were visible in normal space, while other parts flickered in and out of reality. Amy, what's our tactical situation? Amy Rodriguez checked her security displays, which now showed information that would have been impossible before. The ancient upgrades, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Hayes at Defense Station Omega, is coordinating the first line of defense. He has 12 enhanced human ships with him. The enhanced ships were humanity's answer to an impossible threat. The ancient structures had not just upgraded their technology, they had taught human crews how to think in ways that matched the strange nature of the Devourers. Where other species saw only destruction, humans learned to see patterns and weaknesses. Steve, Hayes' voice came through the communication system, calm despite the impossible situation he faced. Captain Morrison, we have visual contact with the first Devourer. It's like nothing in our databases. Describe what you're seeing, Steve. It looks like a massive storm made of dark energy, but it has structure. There are tentacles or appendages. They reach out into normal space, and they're consuming everything they touch. Stars, planets, even empty space itself just disappears. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was what had destroyed entire galaxies, and now it was in their space. What's your plan, Steve? Ancient technology is giving us targeting information. We can see weak points in the creature's structure, places where it's not fully anchored to our reality. We're going to try to exploit those weaknesses. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The enhanced human ships did not charge directly at the Devourer like traditional warships. Instead, they moved in careful patterns. Using their upgraded sensors to track the creature's movements between dimensions, Danny monitored the battle from the New Horizons enhanced systems. Captain, they're using a completely new kind of warfare. The ships are firing weapons that target specific dimensions, trying to destabilize the creature's hold on reality. The strategy worked, but slowly. Each attack weakened the Devourer's ability to exist in normal space, forcing it to retreat into the higher dimensions where it lived. But Jake knew this was only the beginning. The ancient warnings had spoken of hundreds of these creatures. Lisa, get me a channel to all human ships and stations. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Morrison to all human vessels. We've proven that the Devourers can be fought, but we're going to need every ship and every crew member working together. This is what we've been chosen for. Responses came back from across the galaxy. Human cargo ships, passenger vessels, mining platforms, and research stations all reported that they were ready to help. The ancient structures had enhanced every human vessel, turning the entire human presence in the galaxy into a coordinated defense network. But humanity was not alone in this fight. Commander Barnes contacted the New Horizons with surprising news. Captain Morrison, the Corvin Empire, requests permission to join the defense effort. Jake was surprised. What changed? Your mind, Commander? No. My fleet has been studying the ancient structures for weeks. We've learned to approach them without weapons, with respect instead of force. The structures have begun responding to us. Are they upgrading your ships? Some of them. The structures seem to be testing us just as they tested humanity. Giving us small enhancements and watching how we use them. Jake realized that the ancient network was still evaluating species, even in the middle of a crisis. The Silent Ones had built their system to be fair, giving every species the chance to prove their worth through their actions. Commander, humanity could use your help. But this kind of warfare requires patience and precision, not aggressive attacks. Understood, Captain. The Corvin Empire is learning new ways of thinking. Over the following weeks, more Devourers entered the galaxy, but humanity was ready for them. The enhanced human ships had learned to work as a coordinated whole, using tactics that the ancient structures taught them. They did not try to destroy the Devourers with brute force. Instead, they used precision and patience to cut the creatures. Connections to normal reality. Ben Carter, the archaeologist who had first decoded the ancient language, made another crucial discovery. Captain, I've found something important in the ancient records. The Silent Ones didn't just build a defense network. They built a trap. What kind of trap? The structures aren't just weapons. They're dimensional anchors. If we can activate enough of them in a coordinated pattern, we can lock reality in place across the entire galaxy. The Devourers won't be able to phase between dimensions. Jake understood immediately. That would make them vulnerable to conventional weapons. But it requires perfect coordination between hundreds of structures across the galaxy, and it can only be done by operators who understand the technology completely. The final battle came when the largest group of Devourers entered the galaxy together. There were over 50 of the creatures, each one capable of consuming a star system. Traditional military thinking would have called the situation hopeless. But humanity had learned to think differently. Jake found himself commanding not just the New Horizons, but a network of enhanced human ships spread across the galaxy. Each ship was positioned near an ancient structure, ready to activate the dimensional anchors at precisely the right moment. All ships, this is Captain Morrison, begin the activation sequence. Across the galaxy, human crews worked in perfect harmony with ancient technology. The structures responded to their touch, powering up systems that had waited 50,000 years for this moment. The dimensional anchors activated one by one, creating a web of stable reality that stretched across the entire galaxy. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and dramatic. The creatures found themselves trapped in normal space, unable to retreat. To the higher dimensions where they lived, For the first time in their existence, they were vulnerable. The Corvon fleet, now working alongside humanity, joined the final assault. But they had learned new tactics, using precision strikes instead of overwhelming force. The Zephyrians contributed their psychic abilities, coordinating the attack across vast distances. Even species that had initially failed the ancient tests found ways to help. When the last devourer was destroyed, the galaxy was forever changed. The ancient structures remained active, but they no longer pulsed with urgent warnings. Instead, they hummed with quiet satisfaction. Their long vigil finally complete, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizons, looking out at the stars that now seemed brighter and more peaceful. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most important people are not the loudest or the strongest, but the ones who listen carefully and act with wisdom. Humanity had been silent not because they were weak, because they were learning. And when the galaxy finally made noise, the terrible sound of reality being consumed by creatures from beyond, humanity was ready with the only response that mattered: patient, coordinated protection of all life. The Silent One's test was complete, and their chosen guardians would watch over the galaxy for generations to come, not seeking glory or recognition, but simply doing what needed to be done, ensuring that the universe remained safe for all who called it home.